We were investing in real estate. We were doing some fix and flip stuff and some buy and hold stuff. I was hurt from my ACL. I was rehabbing, and I'm like, okay, I know for sure I'm gonna be out most likely like half this year. The agents we were working with, I felt like they only cared about putting money in their pocket. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna cut the agent out. And if I ever have people to work with me or any referrals, I'll make sure that it'll never come down to how much money I'm making. I just want to treat people right.
Well, very excited for the podcast today. We have Jamar Taylor on. Welcome, Jamar.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I got to say, I think this is my first Helix High School alumni back on the podcast with me, or at least on the podcast with me.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, small world, even to find out that you went to Helix, man, and see one of our own out here in Arizona killing it. You know, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I'm a few years older than you, Jamar, so we missed each other. You know, it's funny when you shared that I was attending your charity golf tournament, my youngest sister's like, Brad, that's crazy. I went to school at Jamar. She was there. I don't know what grade she was in, but she recognized your name from Helix. And I'm like, it's a small world, you know, it was a great high school. Very fortunate to go there.
Yeah, she reached out to me. She was like,
oh, did she?
You know, that's my brother. I'm like, oh, no, I didn't. And so, you know, one thing a lot of people don't know this, and I don't think a lot of people realize the closeness that a lot of people have, right, when you go to Helix High School. Mm-hmm. Like it's literally, you know, I tell my wife all the time because she went to Chandler here, and I'm like, man, think about it. I can go back to San Diego or connect with people, you know, around the U.S., and you would think that, you know, we knew each other forever. And I was like, those 4 years were, you know, probably some of the top moments of my life, just because I have so many like lifelong friends from high school.
It's amazing. I mean, really what it comes down to is the value and power of relationships. I know for you, Jamar, I would imagine, and I failed to give you a proper intro, you know, Helix High alumni, I guess, like you and I, but investor, philanthropist, you know, you're a former cornerback in the NFL. You know, speak to how those relationships have played a role for you, you know, high school, college years, NFL, and now post-career, you know, in the NFL, working in, you know, career number 2 for you.
Yeah, I mean, relationships are everything. You know, I don't think you realize when you're younger how much they mean. But as you kind of grow and you go through college, like even talking to my wife all the time about like our daughter, I'm like, you know, like she has to go to college, because I'm like, you know, the biggest thing when you do go to college is it's not so much the degree, because 9 times out of 10, you probably won't even do what you went to school for, right? What you study for. I'm like, but it's the people that you meet, and those relationships take you further. And now, you know, after my year in the NFL, or after my 9 years in the NFL, you know, you even realize when you're going with different teams, it's somebody that you came across, whether you played against them, they coached against you, or maybe they were a coach in your facility or a GA. And the same thing is with business. You know, even now, it's just as you meet people, you realize that like this person knows this person, and you know, it's very much you know, the world is connected in full, right, in a full cycle, because somebody you know may know somebody else that can put a good word in for you here or there, that can present great opportunities for you.
Yeah, it's such good perspective. And I think what's interesting, I mean, for you, Jamar, I mean, we've been connected on social media for a while now. We met in person for the first time at your charity golf tournament that you just had. You know, I think that's another element, the charity arm, right? And you know, just on paper, or as people look at that, you know, oh, you know, this is a charity that made Jamar's doing, but the amount of work and effort, right? That passion to do something, to give back. There's a lot to be said to balancing your normal day-to-day life, your career, yet you're still doing something to give back and put in time and effort. Like these things, anyone that's put on an event, you know, as you mentioned, you know, to have all these people flying in and coordinate. I mean, there is so much work behind the scenes to run a successful charity. Maybe walk through where that passion comes from and why, you know, what is First Chance U?
Yeah. So First Chance U is, I'm going to say it's my baby, right? But other than that, it's a nonprofit based out of San Diego. And our mission statement is to give back through education, sport, and community giving. I like to tell a lot of people we serve the high school family space, not only here in Arizona, San Diego, Seattle, and in the Bay Area. I just so happen to play in all of those cities, you know, in my career, but we also have a group of members who all lives in those cities. And so we do a few initiatives out of the year. One being now the golf tournament that you came to. We sponsor families 4 quarters out of the year in all 4 cities, starting off with Thanksgiving and then Christmas, Q1, Q2. We do a high school scholarship as well. And then we do like a teacher give back initiative. And then we have like some little things like Super Bowl squares um, and then we do a huge defensive back academy, right? And that's like that's seriously my baby. So we put the guys up at UCSD, or we put them up at San Diego State for 4 or 5 days. And all I say is this much football, but it's a ton of like life skills. So financial literacy, building NILs, coping with anxiety, putting them with mentors of their career choice, whether you're a custom home builder or a doctor, nurse, whatever you want to be or whatever they want to be. We try to just give them the tools, right, to bridge that gap to create like a mentor-mentee relationship so they can be one step ahead. Obviously, we talk a ton about sport as well, recruiting and all of the above. But the passion, to answer your question, really just comes from my parents. My parents I wasn't raised with a ton of money. My mom worked 3 jobs. My dad worked on a shipyard. And my parents were just always people that the community can go to. And, if it was my mom to this day, like if she has her last $5, she'll give it away. Right. And so just always watching them, my dad always reminded me is like, hey, if you make it or when you make it, you got to come back. Each one teach one mindset. And their thing was, what's the whole point of going that far if you don't come back and teach people what you've been taught? Right? You got to leave this world better than you found it. And so I've always kept that in mind. Luckily, one of my best friends, Theron Wilburn, we've been friends for 25 plus years, Helix guy, right? And so, he approached me about starting our nonprofit, and that's kind of how this thing was, how it became, it blossomed. And we have 12 members, adding about 4 more in the next couple of weeks, and we could just continue to grow and continue to do great things.
What's funny is Jude. He's a former podcast guest. He's doing a little documentary, for marketing and AFT and kind of behind the scenes. But he always says, Brad, you had these sayings you say all the time, and I just got one from Jamar. Each one teach one. Like, I think that's pretty powerful, right? As you apply that, because I want to get into the DB Academy you're doing at UCSD, but maybe before that, as you look, maybe just specifically for your career, what do you wish you would have known? High school, college, as you go into the league, that would have prepared you. Maybe it was, whether it was training, whether it was, you mentioned financial literacy, how you're teaching others to look at that. What do you wish you were more prepared? And maybe it's not even NFL. For anyone that's going into the profession out of college, going into the professional world, living on their own, going out of mom and dad's house, budget, what's something, that you wish you had known?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I think it's a couple things, right? I think the first thing, and I didn't learn this until like middle of my career, when I had Cortland Finnegan on my team, and Court really pushed me, and I would give him a ton of credit for me being able to make it as many years as I did, because he spent a lot of time with me as a young pup. But I would say the first thing is like ask questions, right? Ask questions. I don't think I used to have a coach that said there's no such things as stupid questions. And so I think a lot of us, we let our ego get in the way, right? Or we get nervous and we feel like, hey, if I ask this, I'm being a pain in somebody, to somebody by asking a off the wall question. But I feel like, we're here to learn and to get as much information that we can go apply. And so ask questions would be the first one. The second thing, just DB Academy that I think about a ton is, I wish that I would have known before I got into the NFL is like for young athletes, like you are a business, right? In every facet of life, again, whether you're a developer, custom home builder, doctor, lawyer, whatever, like you're in the Brad Leavitt business. And so you have to look at your life that way and understand that everything that you do is seed driven, right? So you want to make sure you're planting good seeds. And then the third thing I would say is, again, kind of how we talked about in the beginning, was that relationships matter, right? Relationships matter and how you treat people matter. And so, luckily, I have some parents who did a good job at making sure that I didn't never burn any bridges, right? They taught me that. But something that I'll always remind myself, especially when we get into the game of like real estate and, it can get emotional sometime. And, I just remind myself, I'm like, none of this even matters, right? At the end of the day, like still lead with love in everything that you do. And that's how you lead this world a better place.
I mean, this advice is phenomenal. As I break this down, Jamar, the correlation between athletics and business entrepreneurship, I mean, they're so similar. The overlap is high. And the reason being is, as you mentioned, like, as an athlete, you mentioned business. And, a lot of people may look at that and be like, yeah, it's important financial literacy, budget, taxes, how all these things work, right? You're in the Jamar Taylor business, as you mentioned.
Yep.
But the reality is, like, you're still hiring. Like, you may have a nutritionist, a trainer, right? Like, you have an agent possibly. And so understanding like the vetting process of who you're hiring, who you're allowing to keep that, that circle that you have, just like in business, your business circle, and the people you hire and how they affect company culture and systems that you have and operations. For business, you're looking at day-to-day systems. How does that affect me to be a better custom home builder? For you as an athlete, what are the systems and daily routine and regimen you have to stay in the NFL 9 years, which very rare people do, right? It's
Yeah.
a very tough league to stay in that long.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit it. It's literally systematizing, right? All of the time. Like I always talk about my wife because like when I'm working from home, I'm right here and she's like in the office. And so I kind of kill her because I'm always like, my mind works like the old school outline bubble, right? Like you remember the outline bubble they used to make you do in school and
Yep. Oh
connect.
yeah.
And so, but it's like, how do you come up with the correct system? Like nothing is successful without a great foundation, right? So like if I go by pyramid, for me, it's God, wife, daughter, right? We got one on the way, thank God. Another one, right? So praying for a healthy baby boy. And then it goes everything after that. And so like the foundation, the first three would never change, right? How I look at it. God, wife, kids, never change ever forever and a day. But as we get into that outline bubble of, you know, America One, Jamar Taylor, America One, sports and entertainment, right? Now, what does that look like? And just making sure that everything is, again, is integrity based, accountable based, right? And then operating with great people, because like you said, similar to sport, you have to have the right pieces of the puzzle and the right foundation in order for it to be successful, right? And anytime if you get any type of negative leakage in that, it can spiral downhill.
Yeah, I love that. And the triangle, as you mentioned, family, your kids, God, like how important all those elements are, right? Because that's what creates you. That's what attracts people. You mentioned the relationship side. Well, there's an attraction people have to the personality, to the drive, to the value add that you're bringing to them in their life. And you look now, and there's so much information out there, right? For me, I I'm 44, being open here, but when I started my career, there wasn't a whole lot of information on construction,
Yep.
right? And so you're kind of learning, hard knock, figuring things out, making mistakes. And even though there's information, to have someone there instructing you, mentioned, through your DB Academy, how the trains change from NIL, right? Public speaking, finance, the skill sets still need. Um, you look now, how those resources, how does your experience play a role in that mentorship for young athletes as they're learning about NIL and positioning themselves in business to maybe be more prepared than probably you and I were, at our ages going into the professional work field?
Yeah, well, I also got a question for you, so don't let me
Yeah.
forget.
Okay.
Right. I think for me personally, like my experience, and it was funny because I was out the other night and I seen some kids from Exos that I worked with because my DB coach brings me out to go get on the board, the whiteboard with like some of the guys who are getting drafted this year. And like you just take certain moments as like teaching moments, right? Like I seen the kid out and he would want to take pictures and everything. I'm like, hey, look, like the NFL looks at everything. Go put your drink down, right? Like no drinks in the picture, right? Like make sure you're taking care of your image, right? Because like
Mhm.
what they don't understand, like the NFL is $1 billion business. So they go back, Brad, into like elementary. Like what did Brad do? Like seriously, they call my elementary school teachers and your middle school, and like they know literally everything about you. And so I try to take some of what I've been through and I try to tell them from an experience of I guess a professional, right? Like as if I was coming to you and saying, "Hey, Brad, like, hey, we got this new build. Um, we're thinking about this design. Like, what is your thoughts on this?" Right? Like, I try to really just be purely transparent with them, but at the same time, also recognize that it's completely different game, right? Like I think that's the biggest thing. Like, when you watch the boys on TNT talk basketball, like it's cool to hear them talk about the game and how like, oh, I wish the game was back how it was in '90, but it's like it's not, right? It's not the Shaq and Kobe era anymore. So I think you got to be fully transparent with them uh, when it comes to teaching, but at the same time, you have to be vulnerable enough to know like the game has changed, right? So as much as you want to teach, sometime as the leader, as you will, as you got to listen a little more,
I
you
love
know.
that. Yeah, the power of listening as a leader is probably one of the most important attributes. You mentioned you had a question for me.
Yeah, just with your background and how you've been able to be successful, like what systems have you put in place, right? To have this great business that you're running.
It's a great question, Jamar. I mean, systems, it's funny because when I first started my company, just to be transparent, um, I didn't really understand what that question meant.
Yeah.
Right. And the example I'll give is that there was definitely those early on years at AFT, I would hire some great talent, some great people that were highly skilled. And this methodology, that you would kick them off the pier and hope they swim, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you kicked off the pier, you sink or swim. If they sink, yep, we move on to the next one. If they swim, okay, we'll figure this out. And so there's a lot of that in business. And what I realized, and it really hit home, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago. I hired someone that I'd known for a long time, very talented. They'd only last with me for 2 months. They
Mm,
came in, they were fired up, excited to be part of the AFT brand. We had started building, we had some amazing projects. We had a little following on Instagram, so they're proud to be part of that. And after 2 months, they said, I'm out. And the feedback was that it was just really hard for them, the lack of structure, if you will, right? The lack of systems. And I realized that if you could have great branding, you could have great projects, you could have, you know, all the different things that maybe from people outside looking in are attractive. But if you don't have systems in place, one, you're probably not going to, execute at a high level. And two, you're going to lose good talent. You're going to lose good people. And this is why I'm so fascinated with sports. Right? I'm a big sports fan. I still play actively in a lot of sports because there's so much correlation to, and I'm sure you speak to this, to good businesses that hire properly. They know who they are. They have systems in place. They have a culture. And you see it
mhm.
in business, you see it in sports. What are the franchises, no matter where they're picking in the draft, they consistently, I mean, the Chiefs are a great example. They're in the Super Bowl third year in a row, right? They've had turnover a
Yep.
lot, but they have a culture that people believe in when they get there. They have systems, they have an ideology, they have and so to answer your question, I saw that about midpoint of my career and realized, you know what, I need, whether you're a visionary like you are, Jamar, as you mentioned, you have these visions, you need someone that's going to be an implementer.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that because it does go, and I try to correlate it now, right? Like I never knew. And one thing when I first got into business, like even with like the philanthropy stuff, like I sat down with my co-founder probably about 3 years ago, and I'm like, dude, you gotta realize like this is a business,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, yeah, we're giving back, but we have a team of 7 other people, and I'm like, who we have to instruct on like what to do and what not to do, right? And it's funny because as you bring up the Chiefs, I actually told him this last night as we were debriefing about the golf tournament, right? We like literally uh go like sports based. So we're like, hey, you got 24 hour like time, think about it, feel good about it, right? And then as you kind of start filling it out, jot things down. And so we were talking, and I actually brought up the Chiefs. I'm like, dude, the reason why they're so successful is because the president, GM, and Andy, right, have it figured out. And then they have Pat, right? And then next thing you know, everything kind of works off of Pat and Trav, right? I guess you could throw Spagnolia in there as well, right? DC.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, as a nonprofit, I'm like, who's our president, GM, and our go-to quarterback, right? And when we look at it, if everything else failed with this golf tournament, like, or if everything else failed where nobody else helped, could this golf tournament still be successful? Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it allows us to like answer those questions like, hey, no, I think this person actually did a good job. Or this one did. Or like, as you said, sink or swim. It's like, hey, we threw this person in the deep end right here. They kind of didn't come through, and so now it's kind of time to have like that hard talk. And so um yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I found out, you didn't have success as well as me with some friends that we brought in, and they come in and they're like, some people it's like, hey, it's too much. But it's the same in real estate too. Like I get a ton of people who are like, I want to get my license. Are you sure? Yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, hey, first day on the job, or whatever, this is what a normal week looks like. And they're like, yeah, I thought this was a little less than, from the videos, it all looks good, the marketing stuff, right? But it's a ton of other work. So no, appreciate that. You know, um, again, I think it's just for me, I took a little note too, just like, okay, like, and it's all the same things, but it's always good to hear from everybody else's perspective from
Yeah,
different.
I don't.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. Different perspective. You can't get enough mentorship, in your career, no matter, what stage you're at.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, your comment at the very end there, Jamar, when you were speaking about someone who maybe is looking from afar online. Okay, Jamar has his success. He's shown these incredible homes. He has these amazing investments. Like, I want to be part of that. But they're not looking at, or maybe not aware of, the behind the scenes. It's one thing to what we put on social media, but it's the grind behind the scenes, right? It's the work ethic, it's the dedication, it's the education, it's all these different layers that go into make you successful. um, and that's what people don't see. They don't see the day-to-day effort, and
Mhm.
I'm sure throughout your career, when did that click for you? When, I would imagine at some point in your career, like many people, you know as it regards to football, you were probably talented, and then you realize, hey, for me to get to the next level, like, there has to be work behind it. And I think in business it's the same, that you may have talent and you realize how competitive the environment is, how you have to stay refined and tuned and up to date with technology and systems to be able to compete at a high level.
Yeah. To be honest with you, it hit me pretty early. I go back to like the one thing is I was scared to ask questions, but I've never been afraid of work. And I kind of keep going back to these coaches because they pop in my brain. But Ken Norton used to say, "Work don't care who does it, as long as it gets done." Right, and so it's funny. I'm even thinking about him right now. But like, I figured that out in high school. Like my sophomore year, I met Trey. Right, so
Hmm.
Trey walks in and I'm playing basketball and I'm about to run track. And I see this swole guy walk by and I'm like, man, who is that? Right? I'm like, who's this dude?
He
And they're
still
like,
is like,
yeah, still looks
if
good,
I
right?
interrupt you, I'm like, what's he doing?
Man, I mean, at the gym probably right now. And he was like, they were like, oh man, that's Trey Young. Like he, is probably one of the best guys that played at Helix, goes to playing the CFL or whatever right now. And so I just went up to him and I was like, it was him and Jason Van at the time, and they were
Hmm.
training together. And I'm like, can I train with you guys? And Trey was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, you want to go mornings or evenings? And I'm like, I'm a morning guy. He's like, all right, I'll be at your house at 5 a.m. And I was like, yeah, right, right. So I pull out my little flip phone, and he texts me. And the next day, he came and got me. He was at my house at 4:45, picked me up, and we trained starting from there. So I would say, like for me, I knew in order for me to be like and get where I wanted to get, I needed to do the work early. And Trey, he taught me. He was a big part of that, teaching me that.
That's an incredible story. It's funny. the name game here. So of course, Trey and I were in school together at the same time, a few years older than you, and that's a connection kind of paired us up. Jason Van was my neighbor growing up. Like I hung out with Jason all growing up. Like he
Yeah.
was one of my best
Lemon
friends growing
Grove?
up. Yeah, Lemon Grove. That's
Oh,
where I grew up,
yeah.
Lemon Grove. So he literally right down the street. His dad was incredible. Yeah, Jason I've known. He was a star from a young age. But the work ethic, I think that's the behind the scenes. Is it's easy at surface level, let's tie this into success, Jamar. I think at this point in life where you've seasoned career, you're in business. What does success look like to you? What's your perspective on that?
That's a good question. I had a kid ask me this. One of my kids, man, Ben Morrison, he's actually going in this year's draft. He's like a little brother to me. He asked me that not too long ago. Shout out Ben. And I think for me at this moment is just time. Right now, when does that time come? Right, especially when you're an entrepreneur, because it's a lot of like lonely, dark, hardworking days. It's not a ton, right? But when you're able to have it, I think that's kind of how I look at success, right? Being able to, and it doesn't have to be a vacation in Maui, right? For me, it's little things like being able to go to my daughter's basketball practice,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like today, it's 4 p.m. Daddy will be there at 4 p.m., right? Like I just think time with her, my wife, and like my parents and my little brother, like I really cherish those times because especially as an athlete, like my wife she gets mad at this to this day because I still kind of have that athlete mindset where like I work on holidays, right? Like because I'm used to it, right? In football, you have practice on Thanksgiving, right, or the day before, and then you go home and eat, and then it's back to the office, and so um, I spent a lot of time away from family from the age of, I've been playing football since I was 5, let's say 15, because high school, basically until I was 34, right? So like now for me, success is not so much, money. It's just time.
I love that perspective of time because it's funny that you draw success because a lot of people may look at success like it's fame, it's money, it's you know maybe it's your car collection. I mean, it could be a lot of different things, right? Uh, where you and I align, I think it's time. I think time is it's one of those things that it doesn't stop, right? It's an asset that you can't really control. Things are going to happen. We age. But the flexibility, I think, as time relates to flexibility to
Mhm.
family, personal life, personal goals,
Yep.
that's the true definition of call it arriving or success, in business to personal life.
Yeah, I mean, like even just I just have like a faint memory, right? I remember I think I was on Instagram. I think when I actually text you or I wrote you on Instagram, but I think you were like at BYU with the family, right? And like took them to the game. Like for me, that's I'm like that's successful. Like that's what success means right there. To be able to take your kids back, let them play in the snow, go to a hoop game, right? For me, like I've been telling my wife, like Boise just reached out to us for like the spring game. I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
it's perfect. My daughter has yet to be up there. Me and my wife both graduated from Boise. Like,
Hmm.
what does that look like, making that happen? So, like you said, just having the flexibility to do those things, and then also like with the building stuff, just being able to be creative, right? So many people don't have the availability to go out and do kind of, I would say like kind of what we do. A lot of people, they got a 9 to 5 job that they hate, and I'm like, because, God bless me in a different way, I'm able to go out and, and create homes and work with people that I want to work with.
What do you feel, going into real estate now, what do you feel has been the biggest eye opener, maybe the biggest surprise of, as you mentioned, I mean, I would imagine you've had some mentors and stuff that have maybe painted the picture of what this career would be through philanthropy and investing. Um, but once you get into it and you're working hard and you're strategizing your day and your contacts and your portfolio, what's been the most eye opening?
Man, it's highly competitive, right? Like I mean, just to put it out there, like we were investing in real estate. We were doing some fix and flip stuff and some buy and hold stuff. I never thought I would be an agent, right? Like I actually got my license because I was like, I was hurt from my ACL. I was rehabbing, and I'm like, okay, I know for sure I'm gonna be out most likely like half this year, right? And I was like, and the agents we were working with, I felt like just didn't care. They only cared about putting money in their pocket. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna cut the agent out. And I was like, and if I ever have people to work with me or any referrals, I'll make sure that it'll never come down to how much money I'm making. Like I can care less, right? I just want to treat people right. But as we kind of got into it, yeah, I realized it's highly competitive. It's a lot of gatekeeping, right? Depending on where you're at. Um, but at the same time, if you get around the right people, it's very collaborative, right? And I think that's where deals are done, and where where we kind of create life in our business.
Well, you mentioned that you started fix and flips. You could see the ACL injury probably played a role in that. On looking at chapter 2 here. How has your business evolved from the investment side? From fix and flips to what you're doing now. How did you know, continue to upgrade the portfolio and product that you're working on?
Yeah, I think just, it's just like you said kind of earlier, like the systems. You kind of realize what you like and you don't like. For us, like I will forever buy and hold. I think that's where the magic happens to build up your portfolio. I really believe in diversifying too. So, we keep our financial advisor a little happy. but but I mean, I think it comes down to like data. I'm really like data and analytical driven. Um, but also like to the point where I don't try to be great at a whole bunch of things, right? I just try to be great at one. So like with fix and flipping for us, it was like, all right, cool. Like, do we kind of like this? And then we built our house, right? And my wife and I, and it was like, okay, I like that. Like I've always been a process guy. So I'm like, I like that. Like it's a little bit more riskier, depending on where you're at. But I'm like, we don't try to throw paint at the wall, right? We go by the numbers and the numbers only. We don't force anything. And so as we kind of kept going, you kind of realized like, okay, like I need this piece of the puzzle. I need this piece of the puzzle. And I think that's where I'm good at. Like I'm good at bringing people together, right, to make sure we can make this thing come to life. But yeah, so the strategy changes not so much, I guess, because like now we just want to build custom homes or spec homes. But um, the team can change, right, just depending on right on the deal to deal basis, depending on who did good versus who didn't.
How do you manage again? Because when you're doing a spec home, to your point, which you do have some of those, Jamar, out there, there's a lot of dollars. Time is a big
Yep.
resource there. Dollars out of pocket. That interest doesn't stop. You have to make sure the market's in good condition. Interest rates play a role. Um, when you're looking at that, there's no doubt that that's not a long term play. That's something you're trying to get in, get out, make the right deal, move on. Um, Appetite for risk. How has that been for you and maybe your investor partners? How do you put together your feasibility study or look at a deal and be like, what, this is something that I have a good vision here. I think
Yeah.
could be a successful project. How do you put the team together from, that early on concept?
I think just real like knowing the market, right? Like something like me and Brady, right? We talk all the time is like just like where are we building and where does it make sense? But do we know the market, right? So, like right now we're looking at a deal 85254. Like I sold a couple homes in that area. Like me and my wife actually want to sell our house and build our next home in that area. So it's like we know the area. I know what dirt is going for, and I know like the cost of construction, right?
Mhm.
Also, it helps having like a guy like him or you or I got a couple other guys like I reach out to, and I'm just like, hey, like, what are you guys thinking if I wanted to build this, right? Just give me preliminary because then I could work backwards, right?
Mhm.
I always work with the end in mind. And so knowing that, but also not just that, also know like a ton of the other builders that are building in the area, right? So it's just doing your homework. Like I drive the area. I have a map with pins on it, what everybody's building. I know what's fully off market, what's on market, who has their deals already pending. And then now it's like, okay, let's go look at them. So then we can figure out like how much it's going to really cost us to build this house, and I think I got a great feel for floor plans. Just as far as like the great thing about being a realtor, right? I keep my ear to the ground. So I know with a ton of homes that we have at the brokerage and doing open houses, I know from a floor plan functionality standpoint what people like and dislike. And so now we can use that again on the investment side. And then now hopefully we can create this dream of a house that, more than, 5% of buyers will want.
I love that you broke that out, that more than 5%. I mean, really what you're trying to do in this market is create a product in a desirable neighborhood. As you mentioned, you're trying to create the largest, call it bandwidth of people that are going to be interested, that it'll, work for them, instead of, creating just a small market of attraction there.
Yeah.
As you look at, floor plans, I'm sure that's evolved. Again, all this is experience, right? Floor plans, design, construction cost. Any interesting stories about how you found the deal? And the reason I bring that up is because, some realtors will be out there to find a deal and they're just knocking doors, knocking doors. Hey, do you want to sell your home? You're in a great neighborhood. And, sometimes they'll find their leads. How are you? Because as you mentioned, it's so competitive. If something goes on the MLS, if something's an
Oh yeah.
auction,
Of course.
you have a lot of hands on the table. So how have you built those relationships where you can find these off market deals and maybe be in at ground one before everyone else is aware?
Really just for me, because I door knocked probably for like about 2 months, and then I got gun. Actually had a gun pulled out on me in that same
Oh,
community,
wow.
right? So we had a project down the street, and I'm like just going around trying to meet the neighbors, letting them know like, hey, we have this coming. Later on down the line, would love for you to bring, one of your friends, right? Who wouldn't want a friend as a neighbor? Kind of took that approach. Didn't go well. But what I would say is like with other agents and like wholesalers alike, like you just built a relationship. Like I take a ton of people out to eat, right? But I also don't say no to going out to eat, right? So, um, or I had a friend, a colleague of mine, who said she never says no to coffee, right? So for me, I don't drink coffee, right? So I'm like, hey, I never say no to like breakfast or lunch or dinner,
Hmm.
right? So at that point, you just go, and then I'm always myself, and what I tell everybody is like, hey, I would never try to undercut you on a deal. I would never try to be shady on a deal, right? If the numbers work, they work. If you bring me the deal, I will always try to make sure you keep your fee, right? If it's an assignment fee, um, but I want to work with great people, and if we can get one deal under and it works out, then that'll drive us to create a recurring book of business together. And because I always act about it that way, I've been able to make some pretty cool connections. But it's a ton that the connections just didn't hit. You know what I mean? Which is great. Again, a lot of people, what I've realized, a lot of people think that you can't have integrity in business. And I'm like, I totally go against that. I was like, I feel like I can work with some great people. I have to vet the people like I'm vetting anything else. And if they fit within the confinements of who we want to be around, then deals will get done. Whether it's one deal a year, two deals a year, or no deals. At the end of the day, like it has to be the right one for us. And we have to feel good about it.
Where, where did you understand and get the experience of how to structure the deal in this sense? Is that when, as an investor, there's a lot of risk you're putting in, from time to procure the deal, time, to finance the deal and the costs associated. You got to find a builder, the partners. Some investors may look at bringing a contractor in and they just do their normal cost plus.
Yeah.
Some investors want them to have skin in the game, be like, hey, you're going to do it for free, no supervision, no cost. We're just going to pay the vendors and then we'll split the profit 50-50, because that's how you're going to keep them maybe watching every dollar because they have a vested interest. How has that experience gone better now, where you feel you, without getting maybe into the structure itself, but as far as communicating that with your partner, like Brady Fenn, who you bring up, who's with Fenn Rogers, or, another builder, to make sure that the deal will work for all parties involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we first started, like even our last couple of deals, that our last one we sold was what, October, and like you kind of get into that one, and it was like, all right, like I feel like you have to try it. Let me say that, right? To keep it short, you have to try it. You have to see what works and what works for your numbers. Early on we had deals that were cost plus, and those deals, those contractors weren't worth the cost plus, and so it killed our margins because like time, right? And time kills any deals. And we had some contractors who came in and was like, hey, I'll partner on it, and they pushed them through, and we were able to walk away in the plus, and we felt great about it. But I think it's just having a simple conversation. I think where investors get messed up a lot of times is their approach to the conversation, right? Because even being a realtor, and you get a ton of investors who, they take all of these master classes, and their teacher is like, oh, find a realtor who will partner with you, or find a builder who will partner with you. But then when it comes off of partnering, it comes off like, hey, you should cut back on your fee, right? Or you should cut
Mhm.
back on your fee. And it's like, no, like, we all have families here. I don't want you to have
Mhm.
to cut back on your fee too. You know what I mean? And if you have to, what does it look like on the back end? You know what I mean? So it's a ton of like those conversations. And then I think also being transparent with the numbers. Like, if you do want to go in that sense with a builder, or even like our limited partners, like, I'm very transparent. Like, that's one thing you always gonna know about me. Like, I'm not gonna leave any secrets. I'm like, hey, Brad, this is what we have. Here go the numbers. This is what it looks like from a cost plus perspective. This is the investor developer split on the back end. Right. And I think like just doing that, like, you find that a lot of people, like, sometimes they'll come and they'll say, well, you know what? Well, maybe I won't take that much here. Right. So we get this deal done. Or, you know what? Maybe I could pull back on my fee. Even as an agent, I've came and I've been like, you know what? Let me see if I could work around this and get with my stager to see if she can give us a deal. And then instead of charging you 3%, I charge you 2.5%, right? Or whatever the case may be, just so you like, because you want everybody to win, right? And I think because building costs has gotten expensive, I think because the price of dirt has gotten expensive,
Mhm.
people are always trying to figure a way how to make 13% go to 14%,
Mhm.
or 20 be 23%. It's like, make sure you buy right. And if you buy right, then you don't have to do too much cutting, you know? But I also think that comes from not having to be greedy too, right? Again, though, I'm not saying greedy in a bad way. I just think because, I was blessed to play a certain amount of time, I can be picky, right?
Mhm.
And we don't have to go out here and scratch and claw. I always tell everybody, like, I'm not trying to be $100 million agent. I'm also not trying to be $100 million developer, um, and take all of that on. It's no need to. Like, I want to do one deal, and I want to do one deal great. And hopefully we, make some good capital where everybody's happy, and then we'll just roll it over and continue to build great houses.
But I love the perspective though to be picky. I think that's great insight because the reality is, for you to be successful, Jamar, like you have to be, more of a sniper approach to a shotgun approach, right? You have to look at a deal that makes sense. And no different than business. When you asked about, how systems played a role, in my career, it's interesting as you're speaking about being picky. I think early on, like many of us, I would take any job that came across. Any
Yeah.
lead that would call me, I didn't value my time. So like I would drive out to their house. I wouldn't really vet them over the phone. I wouldn't check their budget. And I spent a lot of time driving, not being paid for leads that would never pan out or even be the correct job for me, right? And you hear this term stay in your lane, but the reality is really understanding what I'm good at. Where can I
Yeah.
be successful? Where can I offer the most value? Because really it's that value proposition. If I know, I a lot of times I'll have clients, that in fairness, they see some of the projects and they're like, Brad, that's not the type of client we are. We don't have an unlimited budget. You hear that, even though every
Yeah.
client has a budget. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
all my clients have budgets, right? But
Yeah.
they always say, like, hey, Brad, I we're not going to build 40,000 square feet or whatever. And it's fine. I always tell them, like, for me, I don't the value of the project doesn't matter. The size of the home, I want to work for good people. Like that's
Yeah.
my philosophy.
Yeah.
It's a tough business. And so, yeah, the project sizes vary, the build durations vary, the value varies. But yes, there's a minimum that we probably can't provide value to them and be successful.
Hmm.
Um, so in your perspective, how does that relate to you on the real estate side, bringing value to your clients, bringing value to the buyer, with your seller group as you're putting that together?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I think for, same thing when I started, it was, because I think, as any business people, you want to, of course you want to do people right, but then also you want to build up the resume, right?
Right.
Like, you're like,
Right.
hey, like, if I'm closing deals or if I'm building houses, that looks good for AFT. If I'm selling, that looks good for Jamar Taylor's real estate. But like you said, like, I was doing the same thing, right? and it's funny you even said that, and it is great to hear, especially as a younger guy, right? But it was, you get into it, it's like you got to do the work, and so wasn't vetting anybody. Oh yeah, I take you to a million houses, go see 50 houses, and you're looking at a $300, $300,000 listing home, and you're like, okay, well I'm getting paid 2% of that, so you pay $6,000 to go look at 50 homes, and so how I like to provide value is taking the builder side of it to the realtor side of it, right? And so treat treat every client as if we're building a project or if we're looking for a investment, because that's what it is, right? So it's like, okay, when you first send, if I'm sending you houses and you send me a list, okay, let's look at areas, let's look at schools, right? Like make sure it's like desirable, right? Because you're gonna call me in 5 to 7 years, you're gonna tell me to sell it. So we gotta be able to sell it. And then now when we go look at it, let's actually look at it. Let's open the electrical panel. Let's bring the ladder and go look at the roof, right? Like, and a lot of my clients are like, we're really doing this. Like, yeah, we're gonna spend some time here, right? Like if we're going out of our way to go look at 10 homes, like let's make sure the homes that we're getting, at least before we get like a real inspection, is that like it's worth it. Um, and then it's just, again, the transparency. Like when my clients come back and like, hey, do you really think this is a deal? And we'll look at the numbers. I'm like, I see yay or nay, right? But it really, I really try to bring a service of like, hey, we care, and we're gonna do the hard work, and it's a team of us, right? I think that's the other thing. And so if I can't make it, we have somebody else to make it, right? And if she can't make it, if Delaney can't make it, then Eugene can make it, right? If Eugene can't make it, then Eddie can make it. But at the end of the day, like we're all going to work together to make sure that you're on the forefront and that you feel like the love. And of course, you get the more mature buyers and sellers who can care less, right? And you just try to come up with new ideas, right, to keep them engaged. But every client is different. You can't treat every client the same.
Yeah. What do based on that, and everything you walked us through, Jamar, what do you feel has been your most, whether it's from experience or whether it's from financial, what do you feel has been your most successful transaction or investment?
Oh man, that's a good. My most successful. I'm gonna take football, man. It's always the next one, right? Like literally, like because you just never know. Like in 2024, like I did pretty good, and like I've gotten better every year, and I look at the end of the year and I'm like, man, thank you God, like because it could always be worse, right? And so I literally take every transaction as a huge blessing, because I know a ton of agents out there that's not closing on any deals. I know a lot of investors who have lost money, and so to be able to like continue to scale in both sides, it's a true blessing, man. So I take every win with a sense of gratitude.
It's incredible. I mean, so how does that, in the NFL, I mean, in prior life, you're setting goals, you're pushing yourself. You have a great year last year now in your investment portfolio. How do those goals push into this year? How are you strategizing, each quarter of the year, the investments and projects that are out there to gauge where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, really, the goal, like for me, like real estate wise, is like I want to have at least one or two deals per like month, right? In any price point, I think that you feel good about that. Again, like I never put a mark on like, hey, I'm trying to make sure I sell 30 million or anything like that. I don't care about having 1% top 1% agent in my bio, right? But I just want consistent like flow. And so how I look at it, if 85 to 90% of my business could be referral, then I must be doing something right.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I measure the sell side. From the builder side, um, just one project, right? Like right for me right now, I'm just like one project, and then what did our projects look like last year, and then as far as success this year, I need the systems better, right? Like, so what did we do last year that wasn't so good that it had needed to be weeded out, and what could we do better this year? And so like this year we got some good things planned. We're looking to build a 5,500 square foot house right now that should be pretty dialed in, and I'm looking forward to bringing this team in to to get the deal done because I trust in everybody, and it's been a long time coming. And so I'm just, let's just get this one rolling. So on the building side, that'll be that, and then realtor side, I just want to keep, kicking tail, and creating opportunities for me and my clients.
How are you marketing these deals to bring as many eyeballs, as much focus as possible?
On the listing side, or
Yeah, I mean, on the listing side, I
oh,
understand the listing side when it's a
yeah,
one-on-one transaction, but as you're getting into the investment and spec home stuff, right? It's better for you. I don't want to say a bidding war, but to have more eyes on it is better for you. To keep the public aware of what's upcoming from a
yeah,
portfolio.
yeah. I would say, good question. I would say, like, for me personally, man, like, it's the it's going, like, I try to go to, like, every not every, but, like, the good broker opens, right? Like, a lot of people see that on TV and they're like, oh, like, they just want to hang out. Like, no, like, deals are being done, right? So going like, hey man, like, Brad, I got this project coming up over here. Would love for you to come check it out. Right. And then, like, our brokerage, we have, we have access to Douglas Elliman. I'm a part of a Nexus group that has over 300 agents across 50 states, right, that do high level sports and entertainment, that work in sports and entertainment. And then, like, part of the top agent network group out here as well. And so, like, for us, a lot of that will be pushed there, right, through those different platforms. And of course, like, the social media, LinkedIn has been huge for me. But also, like, for the last, like, I would say 6 months, Instagram has ticked up a ton too, right? So I think as our projects start, it'll be a lot of video, kind of like you do, right? But a lot of video, and a lot of emails going through, showing people our different projects and just blasting it out, hopefully that we can get it under contract sooner than later.
How's the golf game?
The good minds.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm about to ask you about yours. Hopefully, how'd you guys play? Let me hear yours first.
Yeah, we well, here in fairness, so the foursome we had my brother who's like a scratch golfer. He's phenomenal. He plays a lot of golf, and
Yeah.
Justin Newman is a great golfer. He's probably like a 3 or 4 handicap, and then our friend Christian's really good. So between the four of us, I'm like an 8.5 handicap. So I mean, we've shot well. I mean, of course, there were a few charitable holes, as you know, you could buy. We got the hole in one if you hit the green. So there's a few strokes that come off from donating to the charity. And so we tied the group that won. We were 19 under, but we lost a tiebreaker to Eddie Lack, who his
I
team
think Eddie
won.
cheated. I think Eddie cheated. I told him this morning in the broker meeting, he's like, could you tell everybody who won? And everybody at the brokerage talks about, like, how bad his game is. And I was like, I don't know, Eddie, man. He's like, no, man, I promise you. So no, I mean, I'm happy you guys had a good time. For me personally, that was my first time on the course.
It was your first time golfing?
First time golfing.
No way.
I've had 7 lessons. I've only hit my wedge, and then my 8. So and then my putter. So I've never used, like, my driver, my iron, like, none of that.
Wow.
So it was a long day for me. Like, it started off good, right? On, I think, the par 3. I think we started hole 16 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Par 3, was able to par, felt really good. And then that kind of, as we started moving up, it got terrible, But I had a really great wedge day, which I thought I would,
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I need some driver work. I was tired, my back was tight,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, but all in all, like, great time. Got to hang out with some teammates who I haven't seen since I retired.
Mm-hmm.
So I look forward to getting back out there. All right, I think I definitely have the itch now. It's like, okay, I gotta get back to work.
There's no doubt you have the coordination and athleticism. It's funny because I didn't play golf till my later years, like till my 30s is really when I started playing a lot. I'm definitely addicted now.
Yeah,
But in fairness to Eddie, I'll tell you, those hockey guys, the hockey and baseball guys, all of them, they're so good at golf, man. It's the basketball and football guys, it's a little tougher for us, compared to those guys. But
yeah. I mean, that's what Eddie was saying. He's like, dude, he's like, it's not that bad. And then we had another guy, Alex McKenna, right? He played baseball. And he was like, Alex, like, oh, it was a pretty good day for me. And I'm like, he was like, yeah, man, you got to just keep. He was like, you just got to stay even playing, stay on your plane. He was telling me about his swing, and I was like, brother, I can't, from my, like, to save my life, I cannot stay on the same plane. I was like, maybe because I cover receivers all the time. I was like, you would think I could be able to like stay low. I was like, but I was like, for whatever reason, like my whole body has to go, right?
Mhm.
And so I thought I was swinging, with my hips, and next thing you know, I'm crunching my arm. It was, it's bad when everybody started trying to coach you, you know. So yeah,
But that I will say I'm more impressed because the reality is, I mean, Jamar, for as busy as you are, building your career, family, all these things, and still dedicating so much time to First Chance U and the charity aspect, and again, running a golf tournament, and you had a huge turnout for it. I mean, and not even a golfer, like this isn't your thing, and you go out, it just shows a lot of who you are as a person to be able to go out there and say, this is my first round ever, and yet I'm hosting this golf tournament.
yeah, no, man, I would say, thank you, right, to you, to your team, and everybody that came. Like the love and the support was definitely felt. And when we kicked this off, right? So my co-founder, he comes up to me, he's like, "Man, we should do a golf tournament." And like I laughed because he didn't golf either. But a few of our members do, right?
Mhm.
Like Trey, Doug, a couple of guys, and some of our best friends. And so we were like, okay. And so not thinking like, oh, because it's in Arizona, the majority is going to have to come from me. And
Mhm.
so the way that people showed up, to support the nonprofit, I was just like, I was elated because I'm like, I never felt like I knew that many people here, right? And so, yeah, great calls, great day. I think next year it'd be bigger and better. I had somebody run out. I was like, hey man, I know Barry Bonds, he'll be here next year, and I'm like, oh, this would be great. And like, let's bring the guys in, man, and make this thing highly competitive. So anytime to have a day to compete, I'm 100% for it.
I love that. Well, make sure to keep me on the invite for next year. I'll definitely be there tomorrow. What else do you do for fun?
Oh man, snowboard.
Look at you.
Yeah, I've been
I've never snowboarded or skied my whole life, ever.
seriously.
Yeah,
Come on, man.
ever.
Big Bear is like right up the street.
I know.
Yeah, I've been going. That's why I went to Boise, because I was like, if I could snowboard in the off season, I'm there. I've
That's
been doing it
awesome.
forever. So snowboard. Trying to talk myself into I grew up riding dirt bikes, so I'm trying to talk myself into getting dirt bike here soon. But other than that, man, I'm very low level. You know what I mean? I'm with the family. I'm with the family hanging out. What about you?
Yeah, I still play in a bunch of basketball leagues. I'll play tonight. So a lot of basketball, a lot of golf, and then of course family. I mean, a lot of time with the kids. A lot of you know the the kids are busy. Like I have six of them, so
Yeah.
they're from elementary to college. Like they keep me busy. So there's definitely a lot of family time, business time, and sports time as much as I can get. So
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, you have six. We only have one, and like me and my wife, like it's like every day is something, right?
yeah.
It's Monday through Thursday. I think Monday through Thursday. Friday's the only day off, but then Saturday are game days, right? And so,
Hmm.
um, in there just trying to find some time to just take a breath, you
Yeah.
know. But no, man, good luck in your game tonight. Get some buckets. If Prince is playing, give Prince buckets. I don't know if Brady still plays, but if he does, give Finn buckets too.
Yeah, they'll be there. Brady and Prince will be there, so I'll tell them hi. But Jamar, I just can't thank you enough for hosting the tournament, for making time for the podcast. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the invite, brother.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.